Ranger Harper's voice crackled through the old cassette player, low and unsteady. The tape hissed beneath his words, a faint bed of static like wind in the trees. Field Unit 27, Olympic National Park, log number 5129. We'd been searching for a solo camper, female, mid-30s. No cell signal since Sunday. At dusk we heard someone calling a name. Not the missing woman's name, mine. He paused. The sound of a breath, nervous, reluctant. It came from every direction at once. Then silence. A click, a scrape, the metallic pop of the recorder being set down. I radioed for confirmation, but dispatch had no transmission. That's when I remembered what we were told in training. Another breath. If the woods know your name, you leave. The tape clicked off. We have a saying in the Park Service, if the woods know your name, it's time to leave. It isn't folklore, not an old ghost story passed around to spook rookies. It's written in the manuals now, quietly, without fanfare, and whispered around ranger campfires when the lanterns burn low and someone swears they heard a voice in the trees. These aren't stories, they're field logs. Dated, time-stamped, and filed under unverified auditory phenomena. And they happen more often than anyone outside the service will ever know. Yosemite National Park. On July 18, 2015, the air over Yosemite turned strange. The morning had been bright, crystal and blue, the kind of day hikers pray for. A solo backpacker named Lena Voss texted her sister a photo at 3:47 p.m., smiling on the mist trail, granite and spray gleaming behind her. Her boots were clean, her gear packed tight, the light beginning to turn gold. By 5 o'clock, fog rolled in off Vernal Fall. The temperature dropped 10 degrees in half an hour. Visibility sank to 20 feet. At 7:16, two hikers on the trail below heard a woman calling a name. "Ryan!" she shouted, over and over. They assumed she was calling a companion ahead, but there was no Ryan on any permit list, no hiker by that name registered in the area. When search teams arrived an hour later, there were no footprints. No sign of a struggle, only the fading mist and the distant rush of the falls. At 8:12, the body cam footage from one of the rescuers captured something impossible. The same voice, the same word, echoing through the trees, Ryan, in the same tone, the same cadence, as though the forest were replaying it. A ranger later wrote in his incident log, "The source appeared to move counterclockwise around our position, maintaining approximately 30 meters. Call repeated 3 times in identical inflection. No known animal match." They blamed sound refraction, the way granite and fog bend echoes. But a week later, Lena's sister confirmed that Ryan was their father's name. He'd died 2 years earlier. Over the next decade, the same pattern repeated from coast to coast. Hikers alone at dusk reported someone calling from the tree line. Sometimes a friend, sometimes a family member, sometimes their own voice answering back. The phenomenon became so common that search and rescue dispatchers added a new incident code, A-VIC, Auditory Vocal Imitative Call. The memo was short. Investigate only with multiple witnesses present. That's the quiet rule now. Never go toward the sound alone. When I met Ranger Miguel Silva, he'd been with the service for 23 years. His uniform was immaculate, but his eyes gave him away, haunted, like a man who's seen something he can't explain. "Do you believe it's a natural phenomenon?" I asked him once. He thought for a long moment before answering. "I believe sound travels weird out there," he said finally. "But it's not just the sound, it's how it feels." "How it feels?" "Like someone already knows you'll turn around." He showed me an old photo. A weather-beaten sign from a long-closed trailhead in the Smokies. The words barely visible through the moss. "Stay with your group." They started posting those after 98, Silva said. "We don't print the reason anymore." The Smoky Mountains. It rained that night on Klingman's Dome, soft at first, then heavier. The trees dripped long after the storm passed, and the fog rolled thick through the hollows. A couple, Marcus and Dana, were camped near the ridge. Around midnight they woke to a man shouting for help. "Anyone there, please help me!" Then, impossibly, the voice began calling their names. Marcus unzipped the tent halfway. "Who's out there?" he yelled. The voice answered from behind them, then from the side, then from directly in front. It circled the tent for nearly 10 minutes, each call closer than the last. No footfalls, no crunch of leaves, only the sound of breath and words. Dana would later tell Rangers, "It was like he was inside the fog. My husband swore he saw a shadow move, but when we shone the light, there was nothing there." At dawn, SAR teams found no tracks, just the couple's campsite and a strange radio signal picked up on an unused channel, broadcasting a single phrase. "Come back." What science says. The official explanation is acoustic ducting. In forests, temperature inversions create layers of cool air that bend sound waves, making a voice from hundreds of yards away seem close, or even behind you. Rivers and canyons amplify the effect, forming what researchers call echo corridors. But those conditions change constantly, and audio recordings from ranger teams sometimes capture something that shouldn't exist, the same voice coming from 2 directions at once. Spectrograms show subtle differences between the real and the mimic, one human, one slightly lower in pitch, with frequencies below normal vocal range. When technicians filter the lower band, they describe hearing something like breathing beneath the voice. History repeats itself. Long before radios, settlers in the Appalachian frontier wrote about calling winds. Farmers swore they heard their names carried through the trees, sometimes in the voices of family members still asleep inside their cabins. In 1949, Ozark Rangers posted signs reading, "Answer only confirmed voices." The directive vanished by 1953, erased from policy updates, but the phrase still circulates among veteran rangers, half joke, half warning. Ask around long enough, and you'll hear it whispered again and again. If the woods know your name, you leave. Today, rangers use call verification protocols. When one hears their name, their partner issues a prearranged challenge phrase. If the voice doesn't respond correctly, they retreat immediately. This became policy in 2018 after an incident in Denali. 2 rangers, separated by a bend in the trail, each heard the other call their name. Both responded. Both voices were recorded, speaking simultaneously from opposite sides of the ridge. Audio technicians reviewing the file noted a brief overlap, as if a third layer of sound mimicked both men at once. The file is now restricted, labeled Duplicate Transmission Detected. From Yosemite to the Smokies, the voices continue. Rangers still hear them, sometimes at dusk, sometimes over open radio, sometimes right behind them in the quiet of a night patrol. The warnings are official now, printed in manuals and passed down through every new class of recruits. Never investigate alone. Never answer unless you can see who's speaking. Never trust your own name if it comes from the dark, because the question isn't who's calling anymore. It's what answers when we do. The pattern of disappearances. They call them Category 7A events now. That's the new classification, quietly added to the Park Service database in 2021. The official description reads, reports of missing or disoriented persons preceded by the perception of familiar or personalized auditory cues in isolated environments. In simpler words, someone hears their name called in the woods. Then they disappear. The first pattern, Olympic National Park, 2003. It began on a cold spring morning when fog clung low to the tree line and the air smelled faintly of salt from the coast. Ranger teams were searching for a 42-year-old man named David Rule, missing after a solo photography trip along the Ho River Trail. His camp was still there, tent zipped, food sealed, tripod leaning in perfect position. The only thing missing was him. At 6:12 a.m., one of the Rangers, Emily Sloan, reported hearing a man's voice behind her call. "Emily, this way." She turned, expecting to see her partner, but he was ahead of her, 50 yards up the trail. The voice came again, closer this time. "Emily, hurry." She froze. "Field Unit 3, Bravo to dispatch," she whispered into her radio. "I'm hearing." Static swallowed her transmission. Then another voice, male, calm and familiar. "Copy that, Emily. Come forward." But dispatch hadn't responded. The channel was open, yet no one else had spoken. Her partner found her 5 minutes later, still standing in the fog, pale and shaking. They found Rule's body 2 days later in a dry creek bed less than a mile away. No trauma, no animal predation. His camera was intact. The final photo, time-stamped the night he vanished, showed an empty stretch of forest trail. In the far distance, blurred by motion, was the faint silhouette of a person, facing the camera, mouth slightly open. Audio specialists enhanced the sound embedded in the video file. Beneath the rustle of leaves, a whisper. "David." The second pattern, Great Smoky Mountains, 2011. The Smokies are thick country, ancient, humid, heavy with moss and fog that hangs like cobwebs in the hollows. On October 9, 2011, a family of 3 set up camp near the Alum Cave Bluffs Trail. The father, Mark Holloway, hiked out alone at dusk to photograph the ridgeline sunset. He told his wife he'd be gone 15 minutes. He never came back. Search teams found his camera tripod standing upright in the dirt, the strap of his backpack caught on a branch nearby, as if he'd dropped it mid-step. His wife later told investigators that around 7:30 p.m. she'd heard him calling from somewhere down the trail. "Anna, I found it! Come see!" She almost left the tent, but something in his voice stopped her. It was too flat, too steady, like he was repeating a phrase he'd memorized. When Saar arrived the next morning, she told them, "I don't think it was him. It sounded like him, but wrong." For 3 days, they combed the valley. Then, on the 4th morning, they found him, alive, barefoot, kneeling in the creek. His eyes were unfocused. His skin was scratched, but he had no memory of what had happened. In his statement, he said, "I heard someone calling my name. I thought it was Anna. I followed the voice through the fog. I kept walking until I realized I didn't know which direction I was going. Then it stopped. And I don't remember anything after that." His radio log revealed something chilling. Every time the rescue team broadcasted his name, the frequency picked up an echo, a second, lower version of his voice, repeating the words seconds later. The technicians couldn't explain it. The incident file was marked Category 7A, Status, Survivor, Located. Investigation closed. The third pattern, Yosemite National Park, 2019. By now, rangers had seen enough similar cases to recognize the signs. A lone hiker, dusk. Familiar voice, sudden disorientation. It was early June when a young couple, Harper and May Ellison, reported hearing a child crying along the John Muir Trail near Nevada Fall. They followed the sound for half a mile before realizing it was calling their own names. They turned back immediately and reached a ranger station just before dark. The next morning, another hiker vanished from that same stretch of trail, Derek Young, 27. His final radio transmission, at 7:41 p.m., was brief but clear. "Got eyes on her. She's calling for me." Then static. When his body was recovered 4 days later, the autopsy found no cause of death. His phone contained a single unsent text draft. "It knows my name." The Yosemite office classified it as a possible imitative incident, a term later standardized into Category 7A. By 2020, the patterns were undeniable. Across 12 national parks, 32 missing person cases shared 3 identical details. The victim heard their name or a loved one's voice. The call occurred near twilight or during heavy fog. Radios and GPS devices malfunctioned within a 10-minute window of the event. Internal memos circulated among rangers referred to these as voice track events. The memo's margin notes, written in pen, read, "Subject behavior, drawn away from group. Auditory illusion unlikely. If heard, withdraw, log, and report to supervisor immediately. The science, or what we know of it." The official explanation leaned on meteorology. When warm air sits over a pocket of cold air, known as a temperature inversion, sound bends toward the ground instead of dispersing upward. Combine that with dense forest and canyon acoustics, and you get an acoustic mirage, voices bouncing between tree trunks like ricochets. It's why a shout can seem to come from behind you, even when the speaker is miles away. But that explanation doesn't account for the other evidence: duplicate frequencies on radio logs, identical phrases repeating seconds apart, or voices using names that were never broadcast publicly. A 2022 internal review at Glacier National Park recorded 3 separate voices captured during a single 7A event, 2 belonging to verified rangers, the third unknown. The third voice spoke only once. "You heard me before." Audio engineers found no metadata, no secondary source, no overlapping signal. The report's conclusion: data inconclusive, phenomenon under observation. In late 2023, the Park Service circulated a training bulletin titled Category 7A Recognition Protocols. It warned of psychological triggers, the human instinct to respond when your name is called. The memo advised all field agents to adopt what it called command silence. When a voice is heard, rangers are to verify all team members by line of sight, record without acknowledgement, report to district supervisor upon extraction. Failure to follow these steps had already cost 4 lives. The bulletin ended with a phrase, handwritten in the margin, initialed only RS. "They don't just call once," a survivor speaks. In January 2024, a ranger named Daniel Price broke protocol and gave an anonymous interview to an outdoor magazine. He'd been part of a 3-man rescue operation near Rainier the previous fall. They'd been searching for a lost hiker when the fog came in so thick it felt like swimming through milk. "We heard him calling from the ridge," Price said. My buddy shouted back, and the guy answered immediately. Same cadence, same tone. But when we reached the ridge, there was no one, just snow. Then I heard my own name, twice, from the valley below. He paused in the interview, his eyes distant. That's when I remembered what my supervisor told me my first year. If the woods know your name, it's already too late. Closing log excerpt. Park Service Communication Record. Incident File 7A42. Audio recovered from portable radio. Time-stamped 19 hours, 43 minutes, and 12 seconds. Voice 1, Ranger. Copy that base. We have visual on 2 lights ahead. Voice 2, unidentified. Copy that base. We have visual on 2 lights ahead. Voices overlap, identical tone, 0.8 second delay. Voice 1, say again, who's on this channel? Voice 2, say again, who's on this channel? End of recording. Signal loss detected. No one can explain how the echo knows when to answer or why it keeps learning. Every season brings new cases, new reports, new whispers in the ranger stations. The pattern hasn't slowed, it's only become more precise. And somewhere between science and superstition lies a truth the Park Service won't print, but every ranger knows. When the forest calls your name, it isn't looking for you. It's calling to see if you'll answer. There's a saying among field researchers, "The numbers tell one story, the woods tell another." For years, the Park Service tried to fit Category 7A incidents into something measurable, something that could be printed in a report and closed with a signature. But the data never lined up cleanly. The echoes didn't behave like echoes. The mimicry wasn't random. And the voices, if they were tricks of sound, were far too specific. When you talk to the acoustic specialists, they always start with refraction. Cold air near the ground, warm air above, it bends sound like glass. A shout can skip through valleys or wrap around ridges, reappearing behind you a full second later. Then there's wildlife mimicry. Certain species of birds, like the lyrebird in Australia or the northern mockingbird in North America, can replicate human voices with eerie accuracy. Even cougars under stress emit cries that resemble children or women calling for help. And yet, the scientists themselves admit the limits. "You can't explain language," said Dr. Nathan Coyle, a zoologist who studied bioacoustics in Olympic National Park. "Imitation, yes, but syntax, recognition, intent. No animal on record does that." He played me a clip recorded on the Quinault Trail in 2020. Two voices, male and female, speaking the same phrase. "We're here. We're here." The first was human. The second wasn't. It was slightly slower, the vowels stretched, the tone eerily precise but hollow, as if the voice had been filtered through metal. Coyle leaned forward, tapping the waveform on his laptop screen. "See the shadow frequency below the main pitch? That's what caught our attention. It's subharmonic, below what a human throat can produce, so whatever's doing it is duplicating, not originating." He shut the laptop. "If this were a bird or echo, it would degrade each repetition. These don't. They're perfect mirrors." The cougar theory. The Wildlife Division prefers to keep explanations grounded. They point to the cougar hypothesis. Cougars are apex predators, silent, territorial, and intelligent. Their vocalizations are notoriously misleading. To an untrained ear, a mountain lion's scream can sound exactly like a woman's cry. Some rangers think the voice calls are a kind of territorial mimicry, a lure meant to draw prey closer. But that doesn't explain why cougars in multiple, unconnected regions would mimic specific names. In one case file from Glacier National Park, the supposed cougar call shouted not once but 3 times. "Terry! Terry! Terry!" When wildlife officers analyzed the recording, they confirmed the voice had a human timbre, male, late 30s, approximate Midwest accent. There were no hikers named Terry within 50 miles that day. The official report's margin note simply read, "Unverified auditory anomaly. Possible learned vocalization. Possible, but unlikely." Because 6 months later, another hiker, this time in the Smokies, reported hearing the same name, same tone, same cadence. "Terry! Terry!" The ranger on duty that night said the voice came from both sides of the valley at once. The infrasound hypothesis. Other scientists turned to infrasound, low-frequency vibrations below human hearing that can cause nausea, disorientation, and hallucinations. It's known to exist in mountain ranges where wind pressure and terrain create natural oscillations. Infrasound could explain the unease, the paranoia, even the sense of being watched, but not the recordings, not the overlapping conversations between rangers and something else on the same channel. A 2019 internal memo from Denali's Communications Division included a transcript of one such event. Radio log, Channel 6, 19 hours, 21 minutes and 45 seconds. Voice 1, Ranger Dalton. Bass, "I have audio." Sounds like Peterson requesting confirmation. Voice 2, Peterson, 40 miles away. Negative, I haven't transmitted. Voice 3, unidentified. Negative, I haven't transmitted. All three voices recorded simultaneously. The memo, do not confirm what was heard. In October 2020, the Park Service circulated a restricted briefing titled Unusual Auditory Encounters Operational Guidance. It was 6 pages long, written in calm, bureaucratic tone, but between the lines you could feel the unease. Section 4, paragraph B. If a field agent reports hearing their name or an identifiable human call with no visible source, do not confirm the content of what was heard. Confirmation may reinforce perceptual synchronization, increasing exposure duration. Perceptual synchronization. It's a phrase no one outside the service can define. The memo doesn't explain what exposure means, only that it should be avoided. Several rangers have told me off record that it means don't engage. Once you confirm the sound, it knows you've heard it. One ranger from Crater Lake who asked not to be named told me, "It's like sonar. You ping it, it pings back." 2 theories. By 2023, 2 competing camps had formed within the service. 1. The naturalists. They argue the phenomenon is nothing supernatural, just a rare blend of environmental acoustics, stress, and biology. Echo refraction, sound bending through microclimates of air. Wildlife mimicry, cougars or birds imitating tones they overhear. Infrasound effects, low frequencies inducing confusion or dread. They point out that 90% of Category 7A events occur in temperature inversion valleys, places where the air density traps sound and distorts perception. One training guide for new rangers includes this reassurance. Remember, the forest isn't speaking, it's reflecting. But even naturalists admit there are outliers, cases that don't fit the data, voices using restricted ranger call signs. Whispers captured at 30,000 Hz, well beyond human range. 2. The cognitives. The other camp believes something adaptive is at work. They call it cognitive mimicry. The theory suggests the phenomenon learns through exposure, listening to human speech, remembering tone and phrasing, then replaying it to elicit a response. Dr. Eleanor Graves, a linguist who reviewed over 57A audio samples, described it this way. The calls evolve. Early recordings are simple, single names, monosyllabic echoes. Later ones show language construction. They begin forming complete sentences, matching emotional tone. She compared it to corvid intelligence. Ravens and crows can replicate tools and voices, but something beyond imitation, almost conversational. It's as if the forest develops a lexicon for whoever's listening. Her conclusion was cautious but unnerving. This isn't an echo, it's a response. Perhaps the most unsettling evidence came from overlapping recordings. In 2022, during a coordinated drill in the Cascades, a ranger unit accidentally recorded both a ranger's live voice and its copy on separate channels. When synchronized, the 2 waveforms were nearly identical, except for one thing. The second voice began 0.4 seconds before the ranger spoke. It wasn't echoing, it was anticipating. The report vanished from the internal system 3 days later. Only a partial note remains. If verified, implies predictive mimicry, referred to cognitive division. Predictive mimicry, something answering before you speak. Parallel phenomena. It isn't limited to the lower 48. In Alaska, bush pilots have reported calling winds, voices carried through valleys that mimic distress signals. In Appalachia, hikers describe whispers in hollows that repeat their own conversations minutes later, word for word. In Maine's Allagash wilderness, a pair of wardens recorded what they thought were moose calls. When slowed down, the sounds formed syllables, their own surnames. In each case, the frequency analysis revealed the same subharmonic layer present in the 7A recordings, something beneath the human voice, vibrating low and steady, like the growl of the earth itself. By now, the service is split. Half the staff chalk it up to coincidence, echo, and fear. The other half won't talk about it at all. Those who've experienced it firsthand tend to leave the job quietly. They don't resign. They just transfer. Paperwork citing family relocation or career reassignment. One former supervisor described it bluntly. You can explain away what you heard. You can't explain why it knew your name. The last recording. In April 2024, an anonymous ranger uploaded a file to a private cloud server titled Final Debrief Audio C. It was leaked for less than a day before being taken down. The audio begins with wind, rain, and heavy breathing. A voice whispers, "Bass, this is Harper. I hear someone ahead. Sounds like myself." There's a pause. Then another voice, identical. "Bass, this is Harper. I hear someone ahead. Sounds like myself." The two recordings overlap perfectly for 5 seconds before diverging. The second voice continues when the first stops, repeating the same line with slight distortion. "I hear someone ahead. Sounds like myself." At the end, both voices whisper the same thing together. "We hear you too." The file metadata lists one recording channel, only one microphone. What science can't explain. Every field has its anomalies, the data that doesn't fit, the stories too strange for reports. But what unnerves the rangers isn't the sound itself. It's the implication behind it. That the wilderness isn't just echoing us. It's studying us. Every name spoken, every call for help, every whisper answered. It's learning. And the more we try to record it, the more it seems to respond. When I asked one veteran ranger what he thought it wanted, he said quietly, "It wants to be acknowledged. It wants proof that it exists. And the second you give it that," he shook his head, "it's already got you. The field guide that shouldn't exist." It began as a rumor, passed between stations, folded into late-night radio chatter, whispered over lukewarm coffee in ranger bunk rooms. Somewhere in the Park Service archives, they said, there existed a classified manual, a field guide for situations that shouldn't exist. It wasn't listed in official training databases or distributed through standard chains of command. It appeared in manila envelopes, hand-delivered by supervisors who said little except, "Read it, memorize it, then burn it." For years, most dismissed it as myth, a superstition among old rangers, the same way miners once told stories about canaries and ghosts in the tunnels. Until 2022, when the memo surfaced. It arrived through an encrypted upload, shared anonymously on a wilderness safety forum before moderators deleted it. The file name read, Operational Memorandum, the 7th of December 2020A, Unusual Auditory Phenomena. The first page bore the Park Service crest, half obscured by the faint gray of a photocopy stamp. Internal use only. Do not reproduce. Beneath that, a series of redactions thick as black tar. What remained visible was enough to chill even the most rational minds. Section 1. Definitions. Category 7A, Event, an encounter involving human-like vocalizations or identity mimicry in areas without visible human presence. Section 2, Response Protocols. Rule 1, do not investigate alone. Rule 2, do not repeat what was heard. Rule 3, do not confirm the accuracy of a name, phrase, or identifier. Rule 4, maintain radio silence for a minimum of 5 minutes after auditory anomaly. Rule 5, report only to district supervisor, no public disclosure or press statement. The rest of the page was redacted. Entire paragraphs swallowed by thick black lines, leaving just the occasional stray phrase. May increase mimicry response time. If addressed directly, entity becomes localized. It was enough to suggest intent. Whatever was out there didn't just imitate, it reacted. I met Ranger Ian Mercer in a small diner outside Ashford, Washington, the kind of place where the coffee burns and the jukebox hasn't worked since the 90s. He'd served 15 years in Mount Rainier National Park before taking early retirement for health reasons. When I asked about the memo, he didn't deny it. He stirred his coffee for a long time before saying, "We were told not to keep copies, but every ranger remembers the rules. You don't forget them." He recited them from memory, each one slow and deliberate, as if he were back in a training room. Don't go toward the sound. Don't call back. Don't verify names over radio. Keep visual contact with your team. Leave the area within 10 minutes of last report. Then he looked out the window. Number 5 was added after Denali, he said quietly, after the twins. I asked what he meant. He didn't answer. Every ranger starts the same way, learning how to listen. Listening saves lives. You listen for wind shifts, for water, for footsteps, for the brittle sound of branches breaking under an animal's weight. So when a voice calls your name in the woods, every instinct in your body tells you to answer, to help, to connect. That's what the memo was really trying to erase, the human impulse to respond. In 2021, the Park Service introduced new auditory control drills. Recruits were played recordings of names, shouts, and distress calls, mixed with natural forest sounds. Their job was to identify which were human and which were synthetic. Instructors monitored heart rate, reflexes, and eye movement. Those who turned toward the speakers too often failed the test. You had to unlearn empathy, said one trainee. That's the part that gets you killed. The point wasn't just to build discipline, it was survival conditioning. Because once you respond, once you confirm that you've heard it, you become part of the pattern. One video leaked from the 2022 training cycle at Yellowstone. A small classroom, metal chairs, projector light, tired faces. A senior instructor reads from a printed handout. You will hear familiar voices. You may hear your own name. Do not respond. These are attempts at synchronization. A pause. What's synchronization? A recruit asks. The instructor sighs. It's when something out there knows you've heard it. That acknowledgement is an invitation. The recruits sit in silence as the projector hums. The slide reads, if you hear your name, verify before you react. Below it, do not confirm, do not repeat, do not investigate. Educational pause. Why the brain lies. Our minds are wired to find meaning in noise. It's called auditory pareidolia, the tendency to recognize patterns, especially human speech in random sounds. It's why we hear whispers in the wind or music in static. It's also why this phenomenon is so dangerous. The brain's language centers activate faster than its logic centers. By the time you realize a sound isn't real, your body has already reacted, turning your head, opening your mouth, maybe even answering. That half-second reflex is what the memo calls confirmation. To counter it, SAR teams now use call and response verification protocols. Before every mission, they agree on code phrases, nonsense words that no one else would know. If a voice calls your name, you respond only with the phrase. If the voice doesn't repeat it correctly, you retreat. It's a simple system, but it's saved lives. Redacted pages. Page 7 of the memo is almost entirely blacked out. Only a few fragments remain. If subject repeats transmitted call. Correlation between exposure duration and memory loss. terminate operation and vacate perimeter. Another page shows a faint diagram, human figure, concentric circles around it like sonar ripples. The caption beneath barely legible. Confirmed cases of direct vocal mimicry. And in the bottom corner, typed in smaller font, refer to 7A subclass 4 cognitive entities, auditory. Cognitive entities. That was the first time the phenomenon had been given a name. The memo didn't exist in isolation. It referenced other documents, some dating back decades. One line cited Operational Rule 9C, unattended campsites. That rule, from an older manual, instructed rangers to avoid investigating perfectly arranged camps with no occupants, a rule many thought was urban legend. Another reference, Guideline 3F, Visual Anomalies. That one pertained to unexplainable light formations, sometimes described as orbs, sometimes as structures not attached to terrain. Together, the rules formed a kind of dark syllabus, a guidebook for encounters the public wasn't supposed to know existed. Rule 1. Do not investigate alone. Rule 2. Do not repeat the call. Rule 3. Do not confirm what was heard. Rule 4. Avoid unattended camps. Rule 5. Do not record light anomalies. Rule 6. Report directly to supervisor. Rule 7. Never discuss outside official channels. It wasn't a park safety manual anymore. It was a survival manual. Ranger interviews. When I asked retired rangers about these rules, their responses were unsettlingly consistent. "Yeah, we were told not to repeat anything we heard," said one from the Smokies. "If it said your name, you ignored it. If it called twice, you left." Another, from the Pacific Northwest, recalled a training scenario that went wrong. "We were running a drill, 3 of us with radios. Someone kept saying my name on a channel we weren't using. It wasn't any of us. When we got back to base, they made us sign non-disclosures." He looked down at his hands. "The weird part? The voice used my nickname. No one in the unit knew it." Every bureaucratic document has a tone, a rhythm of words that either soothes or alarms. This memo tried for calm objectivity, but its phrasing betrayed fear. Where other manuals say avoid hazards, this one says avoid recognition. Where others say record incident details, this one says log only time and duration, omit content. And at the end of Section 9, beneath the last redaction, 3 words escaped the blackout ink. It listens back. In one recovered debrief transcript, a ranger describes breaking protocol, answering a voice that called her name. She said it sounded like her mother. "I knew she couldn't be there, but I answered anyway. It said, 'I'm here, honey,' and I followed it." She was found 2 hours later, 20 miles off route, shoes gone, hands shredded from climbing shale. She remembered nothing after hearing the voice. Her partner's body cam recorded only static, but the final 30 seconds captured both women speaking simultaneously. One voice calm, one terrified. The calm one said, "You shouldn't have answered." After that, all ranger orientation programs changed. The first hour of instruction now begins not with wildlife safety or wilderness first aid, but with a video titled Auditory Disturbance Awareness. It plays clips of known 7A events, voices calling from tree lines, distorted radio transmissions, hikers repeating their own names unknowingly. The narrator's voice is calm, authoritative. Your mind will tell you to respond. That instinct must be unlearned. Do not validate what the environment presents. The video ends with the Park Service motto slowly fading into view. Preserve, protect, serve. Then, a second line appears beneath it in smaller font. Silence is survival. Why the silence matters. Rangers aren't forbidden to talk because of superstition. They're forbidden because words carry weight. Every acknowledgement, every reply, every hello or who's there seems to draw these incidents closer, more frequent, more intelligent. Language is connection. And the moment something non-human learns how to use it against us, silence becomes defense. The last page. The final page of the leaked memo was shorter than the rest. Half the text missing, 2 paragraphs blacked out. At the bottom, 1 paragraph remained legible, typed in all caps. Field agents are reminded that repeated incidents of Category 7 phenomena in the same location indicate a learning pattern. Do not engage in vocalization. Maintain radio silence and exit perimeter immediately. Do not assume you are alone. Below the paragraph, a signature, T. Wilkins, District Supervisor. If the name sounds familiar, it should. Tom Wilkins was the same ranger who handled the 2019 Yosemite mimicry case. The memo was real. When I asked Mercer what he thought it meant, he didn't hesitate. "It means the forest is listening," he said, "and we've already taught it too much." The woods are never truly quiet. Even on windless nights, when the treetops stand still and the crickets hush all at once, there's always something beneath the silence, a pulse, a breath, a faint rhythm older than language itself. Rangers learn to listen to that rhythm. It tells them when rain is coming, when a bear is near, when the forest is simply watching. But over the last decade, silence has taken on another meaning. It isn't just stillness anymore. It's survival. By now you've heard the patterns. The mimic voices, the missing hikers, the rules buried in leaked memos and whispered among exhausted search teams at 2 a.m. You've heard about the forest that calls your name and waits for you to answer. But these stories aren't meant to scare you. They're meant to teach you. Because every ranger who's lived through a Category 7A incident will tell you the same thing. It's not the noise that kills you. It's the instinct. Humans are hardwired to respond to their name. From the time we're children, our ears tune to it instantly. It's recognition, connection, safety. That's what makes it so dangerous. When the forest uses that word, your name, it's not speaking, it's testing. And what you do next determines whether you walk out or become another story whispered in the ranger logs. Lesson 1. Stay together. It's the simplest advice in the book, but the hardest to follow. Every disappearance starts with separation. A step off the trail. A pause to photograph a waterfall. A short walk to find a better campsite. Then the fog rolls in. And the voices start. The Park Service found that over 90% of 7A events involved someone who had broken visual contact with their group for more than 2 minutes. 2 minutes. That's all it takes for distance to distort sound and for instinct to take over. So the first rule is this: never separate after dusk. No shortcuts, no quick detours, no "I'll catch up." Stay in the line of sight. Stay in earshot. Because once the forest isolates you, it doesn't have to chase you. It only has to whisper. Lesson 2. The language of safety. Every ranger team now uses code phrases before going on patrol, words that no outsider would ever know. If someone calls your name, you respond with the phrase. If they don't repeat it correctly, you leave. No hesitation. You can do the same. Make one with your friends before camping or hiking. Something simple, maybe even funny, that only your group would know. It sounds paranoid. It's not. It's pattern interruption. Psychological armor against instinct. Because when you're tired, cold, and half convinced you just heard your friend's voice calling from the tree line, your brain will beg you to answer. That code phrase becomes the wall between curiosity and consequence. Lesson 3. Don't follow what you can't see. The woods are deceptive. Sound doesn't move in straight lines there. It bends, ricochets, reshapes itself. You might think a voice is 10 feet ahead when it's actually half a mile away, or nowhere at all. So if you hear something beyond the glow of your lantern or the edge of your headlamp beam, don't go after it. Don't search. Just check. Don't convince yourself that helping a stranger means breaking every rule you've ever learned about wilderness safety. Because you can't help something that doesn't need help. And if it truly is a person, you'll hear more: footsteps, breathing, the natural sounds of life. If it's just the voice, leave it. SAR teams use a saying, if you can't see the source, it isn't yours to find. It's written in bold now on briefing walls across half a dozen ranger stations. Lesson 4. Carry sound you control. Every ranger carries a whistle. Not a fancy one, not digital, just a simple, high-decibel metal whistle on a lanyard. Sound travels far in the wilderness, but not all sounds are equal. A whistle cuts through fog, through valleys, through noise that shouldn't be there. It's a human signal of intent. Predators, natural or otherwise, don't like it. If you ever feel watched or hear something calling your name, don't answer back. Blow the whistle. Because that sound belongs to you. It's one of the few noises that can't be mimicked easily. It says, I'm here, and I'm not coming closer. And sometimes, that's enough to make the forest stop listening. Lesson 5. Know when to leave. This one's harder to measure because it's about intuition, the sense every ranger eventually develops that something's wrong. It might be the way the woods go quiet all at once. It might be a faint radio echo that shouldn't exist. Or maybe it's just the feeling that the silence around you isn't empty. It's expectant. That's when you pack up and go. No photo is worth it. No campsite view, no sunrise, no bragging rights. If you ever feel like the forest is waiting for you to say something, don't. I once asked a retired supervisor, one of the few who'd read the entire unredacted memo, what he thought the forest wanted. He smiled, but it wasn't amusement. It was understanding. It doesn't want anything, he said. It just repeats what it's given. The problem is, we keep giving it more. That's the quiet tragedy behind these stories. The more we explore, the more we teach the wilderness about us, our patterns, our habits, our words. And the forest, whatever lives inside its silence, is listening. Maybe it always was. When you strip away the mystery, the danger isn't supernatural. It's psychological. Fear doesn't lure us off the trail. Recognition does. That's what Category 7A is really about, our own reflection in the wild, bouncing back at us, too perfect, too familiar, until we forget that we're alone. The forest learns from us because we feed it. Every time we name the trees, whisper to the night, call out to someone who isn't there. It's the same instinct that makes us anthropomorphize shadows, faces in bark, voices in waterfalls. The difference is, out there, the wilderness might just answer back. In the archives of the Park Service, one last log entry remains unredacted, filed after the memo leak, unsigned, time-stamped at 4:12 a.m. This will serve as my last field note. The voice has learned my cadence now. It says things before I do. When I stop speaking, it waits exactly 6 seconds, then says my name. I've stopped responding, but it keeps trying. I think it wants me to acknowledge it one last time. I won't. The entry ends there. No name. No location. Just a final transmission code. Silence maintained. 5 rules for the rest of us. For anyone hiking, camping, or exploring beyond cell range, remember what the Rangers now teach their recruits. Never separate from your group after dusk. Stay in visual contact. Use code phrases before every trip. Confirm before you answer. Don't follow voices beyond your light source. What's unseen is unverified. Carry a whistle or beacon, a sound that belongs to you. If the forest speaks your name, don't reply. Silence isn't fear, it's protection. Those 5 rules have saved people. They're written into training manuals now, tucked between wildfire procedures and avalanche response. But the older rangers still say it simpler. If the woods know your name, it's time to leave. Before the credits of an educational training film released internally in 2025, there's an unlisted clip, 30 seconds long. A ranger's voice, quiet, steady, tired. You can hear rain tapping the metal roof of a watchtower, the faint hiss of static from a radio that never quite turns off. Out here, silence isn't peace, the ranger says. It's protection. Then a sigh. A pause. And somewhere beneath the static, just faintly, another voice whispers his name. The recording ends before he answers.